The price for this elegant lady's presence by Henry's side tonight, ladies and gentlemen, is exactly $250,000. The sentence, delivered with a cruel smugness, cut through the opulent atmosphere like a shard of broken glass. It hung beneath the glittering crystal chandeliers of the Plaza Hotel's ballroom, where the air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and the whispers of multi-million-dollar deals. But now, all the noise was muted, and hundreds of eyes were fixed on the epicenter of the humiliation Henry Chamberlain and the woman he had paid to call his wife. Tonight, at the heart of Gold Charity Ball, New York's most prestigious fall social event, power and wealth were showing their cruelest faces. The crystal chandeliers of the Plaza Hotel's ballroom cast a glow over a sea of people in black tuxedos and sparkling evening gowns. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and the whispers of multi-million-dollar deals. This was the heart of Gold Charity Ball, New York's most prestigious fall social event, where power and wealth were on full display. And tonight, no one was more powerful than Henry Chamberlain. At 42, Henry, CEO of Chamberlain Holdings, stood on stage, one arm around the waist of the woman beside him, the other holding the microphone. He had just finished a convincing speech, pledging to donate $5 million to a children's fund, and the entire audience stood up and applauded loudly. Flashbulbs from the press were constantly flashing, trying to capture the image of the city's new power couple. The woman beside him, Abigail Reed, was a masterpiece of quiet elegance. Dressed in a simple yet perfectly fitted emerald green silk gown, she did not sparkle like the other women. Instead, she exuded a calm beauty, an unpretentious confidence. Her honey-colored hair was pulled back into a neat bun, revealing a high neck and warm hazel eyes that seemed to tell a story. And now, the host said over the loudspeaker, "Please welcome to the stage, Mr. Marcus Thorne, CEO of Thorne Developments." Henry stiffened slightly. Marcus Thorne, his arch-rival in every business, the one who sought to bring him down at any cost. Marcus stepped onto the stage with his trademark slick, smug smile, his tuxedo seemingly more expensive than Henry's. What a wonderful speech. "Henry," Marcus said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. A most generous gesture. "And of course, we all congratulate you on finding the perfect partner." He turned to Abigail, his gaze like a snake sizing up its prey. Here is Abigail Reed, rumored throughout New York to be the long-lost daughter of financial legend Howard Sterling. The perfect combination of power and pedigree. A murmur of approval spread through the room. Henry kept his face impassive, but his arms tightened around Abigail's waist. He could feel her trembling slightly. Marcus paused, letting the drama build. His smile widened. "But there's a little problem," he said, his voice suddenly sharp. "See? I'm a very careful man. I've had someone do some investigating." Silence fell over the room. Even the clinking of glasses stopped. "Abigail Reed," Marcus announced, his voice echoing through the quiet space, "is not the daughter of a tycoon. She owns a small bakery called the Sweet Reed in Brooklyn, a bakery that is on the brink of bankruptcy. And the reason she is here tonight, in this dress, next to Henry," he paused, looking Abigail straight in the eye, "is because of a $250,000 contract to pretend to be Henry's wife for 3 months. If a bomb had exploded in the middle of the ballroom, it probably wouldn't have caused a bigger commotion." The room went silent for a second, then exploded into a storm of sound. Whispers, gasps, and then hundreds of eyes, like knives, were trained on Henry and Abigail. The flashes of the cameras were now like machine guns, relentless and relentless. Henry looked over. His fellow board members were ashen-faced. Sir James Covington, the venerable chairman of the St. Regis Corporation he was trying to merge with, was staring at him in disbelief and disappointment. But Henry's eyes were fixed on Abigail. She stood rooted to the spot, her face pale, her hands clutching the hem of her dress so tightly that her knuckles were white. For a moment, he saw the utter panic in her eyes, the deep hurt that made his heart clench. But then, like a small flame lit in a storm, he saw a flash of determination, She took a deep breath and held her head high, facing hundreds of judging eyes. Their nightmare had begun. Right here, under the spotlight, before the entire New York elite. Their lies were exposed in the most brutal way. 3 months ago, Henry Chamberlain's office on the 50th floor of a Manhattan skyscraper is a testament to power. Floor-to-ceiling windows offer panoramic views of the city. The interior is minimalist and stark, with expensive contemporary art. But even the magnificent view cannot ease the pressure weighing down on Henry. "Henry, Mr. Covington is coming to New York next week," said David Chen, his general counsel and only close friend, "and he wants to meet you and your life partner." He made that clear in his email. He believes that a man without a stable personal life cannot be a stable business partner. Henry frowned. The merger with the St. Regis Hotel Group was everything. It would elevate Chamberlain Holdings to new heights, cementing his legacy. But James Covington, the 70-year-old chairman, was a staunch conservative, a man who believed in family values over financial statements. Henry's tumultuous breakup with model Victoria Vance 6 months earlier was still tabloid fodder, and that made Covington hesitate. "I can't invent a wife." "David," Henry snapped, "not making it up. Just speeding things up," David said matter-of-factly. "You need someone by your side. Elegant, smart, discreet. Someone who can convince a 70-year-old man that you're settled, at least until the deal is done. Consider it a strategic investment." Henry hated the idea. It went against all his principles. But he hated even more the thought of losing the deal of a lifetime to someone like Marcus Thorne, who would surely exploit his every weakness. That afternoon, to relieve stress, Henry drove across the Brooklyn Bridge. He had no purpose, just to escape the stuffy air of Manhattan. He parked and walked. The streets of Brooklyn took on a different beauty, rougher, more real, and then a sweet, warm scent of butter and baking sugar pulled him back. It was a small corner bakery with a wooden sign that read, "The Sweet Reed." Through the glass door, he saw a woman busy decorating a cake. She looked tired, her honey-colored hair falling over her forehead, but her hands moved with incredible precision and passion. Without thinking, he pushed the door open and entered. The bakery was empty. There was only him and the shop owner. "Can I help you?" she asked, looking up. Her hazel eyes had a distant sadness. "Give me a croissant," he said. When he tasted the pie, he was amazed. It was unlike anything he had ever eaten in a fancy restaurant. The crust was crispy, the inside soft, and the buttery flavor was perfect. It tasted like the real thing. While he was eating, her phone rang. She hurriedly went into the back room to answer it, but the thin wall couldn't block out her anxious words. "I understand. Yes, I know it costs $250,000. No." The bank refused. "Please, is there any other way? My brother, he can't wait any longer." Her voice broke at the end of the sentence. When she turned back, her eyes were red, but she quickly regained her professional composure. Henry had heard enough. He placed the money on the counter and left. But the image of the brave woman and the perfect croissant haunted him. The next day, he gave David a mission: find out everything about Abigail Reed. The information came back quickly and clearly. Abigail, 35, had inherited the bakery from her grandmother. She was a talented baker, but had a poor business. The bakery was 3 months behind on rent. Her biggest burden was her younger brother, Sam, 22, who had a congenital heart defect and needed complex surgery at the Cleveland Clinic. The cost, $250,000 to be exact, was not covered by insurance. Her life was clean. No scandals, no gambling debts. She was just a good person who had run out of luck. And a crazy, yet brutally perfect idea popped into Henry's head. He returned to the bakery the next day. This time, he didn't come to buy bread. He sat at the only table in the shop and waited for Abigail. "Hello, Miss Reed?" he said as she approached. "I'm Henry Chamberlain." She nodded. "I know who you are. How can I help you, Mr. Chamberlain?" Henry got straight to the point. He placed a thick stack of documents on the table. "I have a proposition for you." He explained his situation, the St. Regis deal, the need for a temporary life partner. He spoke coolly, professionally, as if discussing a business deal. "I need you to act as my fiancé for 3 months," he concluded. "You will attend several events, including the Heart of Gold Gala. In exchange for your cooperation and absolute confidentiality, I will pay you $250,000 to be transferred immediately upon signing the contract, and another $50,000 at the end of the contract." Abigail stared at him, her expression changing from surprise to anger. "Are you kidding? You think you can just come in here and buy me? What kind of person do you think I am?" "I think you are a sister desperate to save her brother," Henry replied, his tone unchanged. "I am not here to judge you, Miss Reed. I am here to offer a solution to both of our problems. This is a business transaction. Nothing more, nothing less." Abigail stood, her face torn. The insult, her pride, screamed in protest. But then the image of Sam, pale and frail in the hospital bed, flashed back. $250,000. It wasn't just money. It was Sam's life. She took a deep breath. "Okay," she said, her voice hoarse. "But on my terms. First, this is a job. All business. No affection. No physical contact beyond what is necessary in public. Second, I will not change who I am. I will not become your walking doll. Third, after this is all over, we will never see each other again." "I agree to all the terms," Henry said without hesitation. The contract was signed that afternoon at David's law office. Abigail watched the $250 appear in her bank account with a hollow feeling. She had saved Sam, but she felt as if she had sold a part of her soul. The acting began. Henry took Abigail to the most expensive fashion stores, but she rejected most of them. "I'm not used to wearing these things," she said. "I'll look like a fake." Eventually, she settled on elegant, understated outfits that made her feel like herself. They spent evenings in Henry's luxurious penthouse learning about each other, creating a believable backstory. He knew that her croissant recipe was her grandmother's, that she loved reading classic novels and hated olives. She knew that he had a collection of old books on Roman architecture, that he was allergic to shellfish, and that he often played the piano alone late at night when he thought no one was listening. During those conversations, the ice wall between them began to melt. Abigail realized that behind the cold exterior of a ruthless CEO was a lonely man, a man with quiet passions and a weariness with the fake world he lived in. Henry, on the other hand, was drawn to Abigail's sincerity and kindness. She spoke of her brother with boundless love. She spoke of her bakery not with the bitterness of failure, but with the passion of an artisan. One evening, he found her admiring her library. "My grandmother used to say," she said softly, running her fingers over the spine of an old leather-bound book, "that every book has a soul." "My father said so," Henry replied. Surprised, he left me this collection. For the first time, they looked at each other not as partners in a contract, but as two people who had found unexpected common ground. The rich daughter rumor began entirely by accident. At a small cocktail party, Abigail wore a simple dress and an old silver brooch. It was the only memento her mother had left her. By chance, Mr. Peterson, an older investor, recognized the brooch. "This brooch. I've seen it before," he said, squinting. "My old partner, Mr. Sterling's wife, had one just like it. She said it was a family heirloom." Abigail merely smiled politely, neither confirming nor denying. But a New York Post reporter standing nearby overheard the conversation. The next day, a headline read, "Henry Chamberlain's mysterious beau has Sterling connections. A hidden lady appears." The rumor spread like wildfire, and soon it was spun into a story that Abigail was the illegitimate daughter of late financial legend Howard Sterling. Henry and David decided not to correct it. This rumor was, ironically, extremely useful. It convinced James Covington completely, but Abigail felt increasingly uneasy. "Henry, we can't let people believe this," she said. "It's not true. I feel like a fraud." "Abigail, it will be a while," he assured her, though he felt a twinge of guilt creeping in. "After the ball, it will all be over." The night before the Heart of Gold gala, they had dinner together on the penthouse balcony overlooking the glittering lights of New York City. No lawyers, no contracts, just the two of them. "Thank you," Henry said unexpectedly. "For what? For doing this? And for being you? I haven't felt this peaceful in a long time." He looked at her, his eyes surprisingly sincere. "I almost forgot what it felt like to talk to someone who doesn't want anything from me. But I took $250,000 from you," she repeated bitterly. "No," he shook his head. "That's me paying for a problem. But what you bring, your calm, your stories over bread, your laughter at an old movie, it's priceless." They were silent for a long moment. The distance between them seemed to disappear. He reached out and gently brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. His fingers were warm against her skin. In that moment, they both knew that the boundaries of the contract had been erased. Feelings had sprouted, real and strong, making the lie they would face tomorrow all the more heavy and terrifying. And now, they stood on that stage, under the relentless lights and judgmental eyes. Marcus Thorne's accusations still echoed in the air. Henry looked at Abigail, at the determination in her eyes, and he knew what he had to do. He couldn't run away. Not this time. He had spent his life building an empire based on cold calculation. But the woman beside him had taught him something more important. He squeezed Abigail's hand, a squeeze that gave her strength. Then he turned and stepped to the microphone again. The room held its breath. "Marcus Thorne is right," Henry began, his voice low and clear, cutting through the silence. There was a gasp of surprise. "Abigail Reed is not a tycoon's daughter," he continued, looking straight at the crowd. "The truth is," his voice grew stronger, "she is worth 1,000 times more. She is a woman who works 18 hours a day in her bakery, not to buy designer handbags, but to create something beautiful and real with her own hands. She is a sister who would do anything, even accept a shameful deal with a man like me, just to save her brother's life." He paused, glancing at Marcus with disdain. "Yes, we had a deal, and that was my biggest mistake. Not in hiring her, but in letting the pressures of the world, of deals, of gossip, make me believe that image was more important than substance. I thought I needed a rich kid to succeed." He turned, facing Abigail. His eyes were filled with regret and something much deeper. "But in the past 3 months, this woman has taught me a lesson no business school could ever teach. She has taught me the value of honesty, of kindness, and of a perfect croissant made with love. I hired her to pretend to be my wife." His voice choked. "And I failed. I failed miserably. Because now, all I want in this world is to be her husband for real." Tears began to roll down Abigail's cheeks. But they weren't tears of shame or fear. They were tears of emotion. Emboldened by Henry's confession, she stepped forward. She didn't need a microphone. Her voice was clear and steady, loud enough for everyone in the front row to hear. "I accepted the Chamberlain's offer," she said, looking straight into the stunned faces. "I took $250 from him. I'm not proud of how I got it, but I'll never be ashamed of why. My brother will have surgery next week thanks to that money." She looked around the room. From the diamond-adorned women to the powerful businessmen. "You can judge me tonight. You can write about me in the paper tomorrow. But I know my worth isn't in my bank account or my family tree. My worth is in the love I have for my family and in my ability to make the best brioche in Brooklyn. And that's enough for me." She finished speaking, and an awkward silence fell. No one applauded, but no one whispered anymore. The judgment in their eyes had been replaced by a grudging respect, Marcus Thorne's actions backfired spectacularly. He wanted to look like a hero exposing the truth. But in the end, he just came across as a petty, evil person, willing to destroy other people's lives to gain an advantage. Then a man stood up from the front row and walked toward the stage. It was Sir James Covington. He passed Marcus without a glance. He went straight to Henry. "Young man," he said, his voice deep, "you may have begun this conversation with a lie, but you have ended it with truth and honor. That is the kind of man I want to do business with." He held out his hand. "The deal is still on." Henry shook his hand, a huge sense of relief welling up inside him. After the party ended in a media frenzy, Henry and Abigail returned to their penthouse in silence. New York City still sparkled outside, but their world had changed forever. "I'm sorry, Abigail," Henry said softly. "I put you in this situation. We faced it together," she replied, her voice still shaking. Henry went into his office and came back with two things. The first was a check. "Here's $50,000. The rest is according to our contract. You owe me this." He handed her the check. She hesitated, but then took it. "And here," he said, his voice suddenly nervous. He knelt on one knee on the cold marble floor. He opened a small velvet box. Inside was an engagement ring. Not a huge, ostentatious diamond, but a delicate blue sapphire surrounded by small diamonds, the same color as her own eyes. "This is what my heart owes you. Abigail Reed, the most talented baker, the bravest woman I have ever known. Will you marry me? No contracts, no lies. Just you and me, and all our truths. Will you marry me?" Abigail looked at him, at the powerful man kneeling before her, his eyes filled with hope and hurt. Tears welled up again, but this time they were tears of pure happiness. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I do." 1 year later, the shiny new brass sign reads, "Chamberlain and Reed Patisserie." The bakery is no longer in Brooklyn, but has moved to a swanky location on Manhattan's Upper East Side. It has become one of the trendiest places in the city. Reservations must be made weeks in advance. Inside, Abigail, in a white apron, was showing a young baker how to knead dough. She was still the life of the place. Her laughter echoed through the warm, fragrant space filled with the scent of butter and chocolate. Sam had a successful surgery. He is studying business administration at university and helps his sister run the bakery's books on weekends. The back door to the kitchen opened, and Henry walked in, his shirt sleeves rolled up, a smear of flour on his cheek. He was no longer the cold CEO he had been a year ago. His smile was easy and warm. "Mrs. Chamberlain," he said playfully, "is the croissant order ready for the board meeting?" "Almost there." "Mr. Chamberlain," she replied with a smile, reaching up to wipe the powder from his cheek. "If you would help instead of just standing there looking smart." He wrapped his arms around her from behind, breathing in the sweet scent of her hair. "This is the best merger of my life," he whispered in her ear. They stood there, in the middle of their bakery, hands covered in flour, surrounded by the scent of new beginnings. They had started with a lie bought with money, but in the end, they had found a truth sweeter than any cake they could have made. The truth of love, built on courage, forgiveness, and a contract perfectly broken. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this story. If you love this story, don't forget to click like to support the channel. Share this story with family and friends, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any stories.